Welcome to Diverse Orange, our conversations about diversity here in Central Florida. Today, my guest is Larry Smith. Welcome, Larry.
Hi.
So, Larry, you received the Orlando Business Journal's Lifetime Achievement Award in Diversity, and I want to get to that. But first, let's just talk about you. Where do you come from? I hear a little bit of a Southern accent there.
Yeah, I grew up in Northwestern Alabama. I went to undergraduate in Florence, Alabama, and then law school at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. But I've been here in the Central Florida area for nearly 40 years, so I feel almost like a native.
All right, great. And what brought you to Central Florida?
A job. I was in law school. I interviewed around the southeastern United States primarily, and ended up interviewing with a great law firm called Rumberger Kirk, and practiced there for a number of years. And after wandering around, as many people do in the profession, I came back to Rumberger Kirk just before COVID hit, and I'm sitting in my office at Rumberger Kirk again with colleagues and friends, working again here.
Well, obviously you had gone to college and stuff, but coming from Northwest Alabama to Central Florida, what was your perspective on life here and the diversity of its life here?
Well, it's changed a lot for me over time. And I guess the reason I got the Lifetime Achievement Award that you're kind enough to mention is that I'm part of the LGBT community. I didn't come out until later in life. And so my perspective about diversity certainly changed after my life changed. And I will say that one of the things that I most appreciate about Central Florida is that it's big heart, it's open mind, it is rich in diversity. And I have lived, as I say, for the last 40 years of my life here, and about 30 of that or so as an openly out gay man.
Would that not have been as easy a transition in your hometown?
Probably not, but I don't know the answer to that. People find their own path and their own timing and their own way. Mine was, it came at its own time. Would it have happened in Alabama? I probably. It would have been more difficult. I think it would have been a lot more difficult, but that doesn't mean that it was easy. It was just maybe easier.
Yeah.
And one of my goals in speaking and writing and coaching about diversity, equity, and inclusion is try to make sure that younger folks don't have quite as difficult and perilous a journey as I did. We're all called upon to make the world a better place and to make it a little easier. As a friend of mine, the first African-American president of the Florida Bar, Gene Pettis, says, when you get to a place where you can, a place of strength, you reach back with your strong hand to help those behind you. So I took those words to heart, and I've tried to do that.
What would you say gave you the fortitude to make that change, to enter into a space that was not in the majority space?
Yeah, it may sound a little self-righteous, but I think it was my sense of integrity. My parents, who had a sixth grade education, didn't have a lot to give me, but one of the things they certainly gave me was a work ethic, and they gave me integrity. And I didn't feel like if I was going to live a life that I could live a lie. And so the way it came about, I was a practicing lawyer. I was sitting in my office, and this was in 1999, I believe. I had met my then life partner a couple of years before. And there was an article in the Florida Bar News, which is, it's the journal for lawyers across the state. And it was one of the Supreme Court justices who was talking about professionalism and how professionalism included diversity. And he talked about race and gender and ethnicity being part of diversity. And I read that, and for the first time in my life, I thought I ought to do something about that. So I sat down and I penned, I don't remember, it was a long letter. It was a typical lawyer footnoted letter of 8 or 9 or 10 pages or something.
There's a bunch of therefores and forthwith.
I'm confident there were a number of semicolons, lists, and other things, but it told a story And I basically said to the justice, and by the way, I'd never met or talked or written to an appellate judge in my life at that time. And I said, it's good as far as it goes, but I think you've left out sexual orientation. And then I mailed the letter and I kind of forgot about it and went back to work. And a few weeks later, I got a call from his assistant, his judicial assistant, saying, Justice Anstead is on the line. He wants to talk to you about your letter. And I'm like looking around at my bar license on the wall thinking, oh, dear Lord, what have I done? But he was an amazingly kind, open professional. He talked about his experience as a Jewish man and growing up in a time in Florida where he helped move furniture to make ends meet when he was a student. And at that time, many of the folks that were working on the truck with him were African American, and they couldn't go into the restaurants at lunch, and he would have to go in and get their lunch and bring it out. And at the end of that conversation with me, he basically said, I don't understand your perspective, Larry, but I understand you have a perspective. And if you want to share that perspective, I'll walk down the hall to the Chief Justice and ask him to appoint you to that Supreme Court Commission on Professionalism. And if you don't want to do that, it was a really nice letter. So he basically was saying, you're either part of the solution or part of the problem, or you're part of the solution. What do you want to be? And he enabled me and empowered me to be a part of the change. So I became the first openly gay lawyer to address the Florida bar about professionalism as it entailed with the LGBT community. And then there was just a lot of firsts that came after that. The first to serve on this committee, first to serve on that committee, the commissions on organizations around the country. So that's a long story, but that is how I got involved.
And did you, you've mentioned some folks of different races. There's all kinds of inclusion issues, right? Of othernesses of people around us. What is my question? Did that open your perspectives for other people of like religious or racial or ethnic minorities as well?
Sure. I think that anybody who has felt the sting of discrimination or harassment or bigotry becomes a little more sensitive to others who share the same plight. An African-American woman walks into a room, she has different challenges than I do, but I can appreciate that she has challenges because I know what it's like if I walk into a room of all straight white guys and I began to talk and I feel a similar sense. So yes, I think there is something that sensitizes us to understanding the circumstances of other. And that isn't just if you belong to one of the minority classifications. Allies can do the same thing. So I think it's just becoming aware of challenges that our neighbors, our friends, our family members face.
And what would you say is one of your major achievements that would probably be listed on this Lifetime Achievement Award?
I guess one of the things I'm most proud of is there's a program now making its way around the state bar, the Florida bar, called the Path to Unity, and it really recognizes the contributions that lawyers have made in changing minds and changing views over time. And that Path to Unity recognizes what they call 5 legends. They pick somebody that represented a changing force in race, in gender, ethnicity, in disabilities, and in sexual orientation. And I was blessed to be the person that they chose for the LGBT representative. And part of that is what that does is, first of all, they painted portraits of the 5 people, and those five portraits are making their way around the state in high schools, in middle schools, in courthouses, where there are conversations and education about the way that the bar itself has changed, the way the profession looks at things. They sat in the rotunda of the Florida Supreme Court for this last term, and so that's a really important recognition. And as I told the student artist who painted my portrait, you don't have much to work with. And I totally get that, right? So I don't care what the portrait looks like. All I care about, our job is to make sure that people understand when they walk past it why I have a portrait. And that's why he painted on the portrait a rainbow ribbon. And that at least, yeah, you can kind of see it there. I wear it a lot in the Path of Unity pin. So I'm really proud of that program that the Florida Bar is doing. And I think that's true. So people can stop and say, you know, the LGBT community has had a voice, and now they have a seat at the table. No better, no worse, just a seat at the table where they can be heard.
The phrase that was coming to my mind this morning as I was out for a jog was to treat others as you'd like to be treated.
Yeah.
And I think that is the basic value of Fusion Fest, which celebrates the diversity we have here in Central Florida. So it's been great to talk to you today, Larry. Thank you for joining me.
It was absolutely my pleasure.
And thank you for watching this issue of Diverse Orange. Thanks.